What would you do if the people who were supposed to keep your neighborhood in order suddenly turned into dictators, making up rules that only benefited themselves? That's exactly what happened to me when my HOA, run by the most power-hungry woman alive, decided that my perfectly legal, completely useful tractor was a violation of their so-called community standards. I didn't know it at the time, but that single decision would set off a chain of events that would bring the entire HOA crashing down, and trust me, it was glorious. I moved into this neighborhood over a decade ago. It was the perfect blend of rural charm and suburban convenience, big yards, friendly neighbors, and enough space to actually breathe. I had my tractor not because it was some kind of status symbol but because it was useful. In the summer, it kept my property in shape. In the winter, it saved people's lives. Every year, when the snow came down in thick, heavy blankets, I used my tractor to clear my driveway and help out my neighbors, especially the elderly folks who couldn't do it themselves. Nobody complained. Nobody cared. It was just part of how the community worked. And then Karen took over. Yes, her name was actually Karen, and yes, she lived up to every single stereotype. She had been HOA president for 3 years, and in that time, she had managed to turn what was supposed to be a simple homeowners association into her own personal fiefdom. Rules got stricter, fines became more frequent, and any attempt to push back was met with condescending smiles and patronizing emails about community standards. You couldn't leave your trash cans out for more than 2 hours after pickup. You couldn't have a shed unless it matched your house's trim color, and don't even get me started on the Christmas decoration ban. But the one rule that really sent me over the edge? The heavy machinery ban. I found out about it the same way most people do when dealing with a power-tripping HOA, through a passive-aggressive letter taped to my door. The letter, stamped with the HOA's official seal, read, "Dear homeowner. Per HOA guidelines, all heavy machinery, including tractors, is prohibited from being stored on residential property. Please remove the listed violation within 30 days to avoid penalties." I actually laughed when I first read it. My tractor had been parked in my driveway for years without a single issue. Nobody had ever complained. I wasn't out there tearing up the roads or blasting the engine at odd hours. It was necessary, so surely, this was just some misunderstanding, right? Wrong. At the next HOA meeting, I walked in expecting a reasonable conversation. That was my first mistake. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a place that was supposed to be for neighborhood events but was really just Karen's throne room. She sat at the head of the table, dressed in one of her impeccably pressed blazers, her fake smile plastered across her face. Next to her sat Brad, the HOA's vice president and Karen's ever-loyal lapdog, nodding along like he didn't have a single independent thought in his head. When my turn came to speak, I kept it simple. I explained that my tractor was not an eyesore, not a hazard, and absolutely necessary for snow removal. Without it, my driveway, and several of my neighbors, would be completely inaccessible during winter storms. Karen's smile never wavered. "I understand your concerns," she said, in the same tone a kindergarten teacher might use to explain to a toddler why they couldn't eat crayons. "But the board has decided that heavy machinery, including tractors, does not align with the aesthetic of our community." The aesthetic of our community. I stared at her, trying to process the sheer absurdity of what she had just said. Aesthetic? What part of a 10-foot wall of snow was aesthetically pleasing? I pointed out that my tractor had been here for years without issue. That's when Brad, the ever-faithful parrot, decided to chime in. "The rule is the rule," he said, looking far too smug for someone who had contributed exactly 0 original thoughts to the conversation. "If we make an exception for you, then everyone will want to bend the guidelines." And just like that, the HOA voted. My tractor was officially banned. I had 30 days to remove it or I'd be fined $100 per week. If I refused to comply, they could escalate the fines, place a lien on my property, and even move toward foreclosure over a tractor. I fought it. I filed appeals, tried to reason with them, even got some neighbors to sign a petition in my favor. None of it mattered. Karen and her crew had made up their minds, so, with no other choice, I loaded my tractor onto a trailer and drove it out to a friend's barn on the outskirts of town. As I parked it there and walked away, I had this nagging feeling, asterisk asterisk, this was going to come back and bite them hard, asterisk asterisk. I just didn't realize how soon it would happen. Winter arrived slowly at first, teasing the neighborhood with light dustings of snow and crisp, chilly mornings. The HOA board remained smug, patting themselves on the back for their so-called community improvements. The snowplow service they had hired, a service I hadn't asked for but was still being forced to pay for, sent out a glossy pamphlet reassuring residents that their roads would be professionally maintained throughout the winter season. Karen even sent out an email reminding everyone that personal snow clearing equipment was unnecessary and that any violations of the HOA policy would still be met with fines. That last part was clearly aimed at me. At first, I didn't mind. The snowfall was light, and people managed to shovel their own driveways just fine. But then, as if Mother Nature herself had been waiting for the perfect moment to teach the HOA a lesson, the blizzard hit. It started with the weather reports shifting dramatically overnight. Meteorologists warned that a historic storm was barreling toward us, one that would bring over 3 feet of snow, high winds, and sub-zero temperatures. This wasn't the kind of snowfall you could clear with a shovel or wait out in the comfort of your home. This was the kind of storm that shut down entire towns. And yet, even as the warnings became more dire, Karen and the HOA refused to acknowledge the growing crisis. Another email came through. Dear residents, our contracted snow removal service is prepared to handle the upcoming snowfall. Please remain patient and refrain from using personal equipment to clear roads or driveways, as this violates HOA regulations. Thank you for your cooperation in keeping our community safe and aesthetically pleasing. I actually laughed out loud when I read that. The storm hadn't even started, and they were already doubling down on their stupidity. I forwarded the email to a few of my neighbors, adding, "Let's see how long that lasts." Then the blizzard arrived, and everything fell apart. The snow came down in thick, blinding sheets, piling up faster than anyone could process. The roads vanished beneath it, sidewalks disappeared, and driveways turned into impassable white walls. The wind howled through the neighborhood, rattling windows and pushing snow into towering drifts that buried cars up to their roofs. Power lines sagged under the weight of ice, and then, one by one, they snapped. Houses went dark. Heat shut off, people were trapped inside their homes, completely cut off from the outside world. And as the storm raged on, it quickly became clear that the HOA's precious snowplow service was nowhere to be found. By morning, the neighborhood was in full-blown crisis mode. Families with young children and elderly residents had no way to leave their homes. People who relied on electricity for medical equipment were suddenly in danger. The roads weren't just buried, they were gone, and the HOA? Silent. Well, not completely silent. They still had time to send out more fines. Yes, as insane as it sounds, HOA violations kept rolling in. Some genius over at HOA headquarters had apparently decided that even in the middle of a natural disaster, rules were rules. The neighborhood email thread exploded with complaints. I just got fined for leaving my garbage bins out. The trucks haven't even run this week. How the hell am I supposed to clear my sidewalk when I can't even get my front door open? We have no heat, no power, and they're fining us for Christmas decorations? Are they insane? And then came the best email of all. Karen, in her infinite wisdom, sent out an official HOA update. Dear residents, due to unforeseen circumstances, our snow removal service has been delayed. Please remain patient, as they are working hard to clear the roads. In the meantime, we ask that all residents continue to adhere to HOA guidelines. Failure to maintain walkways or remove snow in a timely manner may result in violations. That was it. No solutions, no help, just a warning that people were still expected to follow HOA rules. People were furious. The same neighbors who had voted in favor of the tractor ban were suddenly realizing just how badly they had screwed themselves. The neighborhood group chat, which was usually filled with people tattling on each other for minor infractions, was now a raging wildfire of complaints. Then came the knock at my door. I didn't even have to look outside to know who it was. The sound of shuffling boots in deep snow, hesitant and awkward, told me everything I needed to know. When I finally opened it, I was greeted by Brad, the HOA vice president, bundled up like a child on his first snow day. His face was red, not just from the cold, but from the sheer humiliation of what he was about to ask me. He cleared his throat. We could use some help." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Help with what?" Brad shifted uncomfortably, clearly not wanting to say the words. Finally, after a long pause, he sighed. "The roads. The driveways. Karen's house is completely snowed in. The plows aren't coming. We need your tractor." I took a slow sip of my coffee, savoring the moment. "You mean the tractor the HOA banned?" Brad winced. "Yeah, that one." I stared at him, letting the silence stretch between us. I wasn't about to make this easy for them. Finally, I shrugged. "Wish I could help, but my tractor isn't stored here anymore. HOA rules and all." His face fell. "Come on, man." I raised an eyebrow. "Good luck with the storm." Then I shut the door in his face. I watched from the window as Brad struggled back through the knee-deep snow, slipping twice on his way down my driveway. I smirked as I took another sip of coffee. The HOA had made their bed. Now they could lie in it, under 3 feet of snow, ***. I sat by my window, sipping coffee, warm and comfortable, as the storm raged on outside. The neighborhood was buried, the streets impassable, and the once proud HOA board was flailing in the disaster they had created. I could see neighbors stepping out of their houses, staring in disbelief at the mountains of snow that blocked their driveways. Some attempted to shovel, but the sheer volume was overwhelming. Others simply stood there, waiting, waiting for a plow that wasn't coming, The group chat had become a battlefield. People were furious, complaints flew in every direction, but the best message by far came from Karen herself. "Karen, HOA president. The snowplow company just emailed me. They're overwhelmed and won't be able to reach our neighborhood for at least 3 days. Please remain calm." I nearly choked on my coffee. 3 days? Oh, this was too good. The same woman who fined me for storing a tractor on my own property was now begging the community to be patient as they sat freezing in their homes. Then, as if the night couldn't get any better, my phone rang. "Karen." I let it ring a few times, just for fun. When I finally answered, I kept my voice casual. "Hello?" There was a long pause, followed by a sharp exhale. "We need to talk." I leaned back in my chair. "About what?" "The roads," she said through clenched teeth. "And your equipment." I grinned. "Oh, you mean my tractor? The one the HOA decided was unnecessary?" Silence. She cleared her throat. "Look, I don't have time for this. The plows aren't coming. People are trapped. Emergency services can't reach us. We need the roads cleared." "Sounds rough," I said, dragging out my words just enough to let her stew in the mess she had made. Another pause, then finally, "Are you going to help or not?" I let the question hang in the air. She had spent years lording over this neighborhood, treating me like some reckless rule breaker, issuing fines over nonsense, and now, now, she was at my mercy, "Well," I said slowly, "I'd love to help. But, you see, I wouldn't want to violate HOA policy." Karen's voice rose. "You're seriously going to let people suffer just to prove a point?" "Oh no, I definitely want to help. I smiled to myself. I just think we need to settle a few things first. Her frustration was almost palpable. What things? I leaned forward. First, I want the tractor ban lifted. Immediately. In writing. There was a long, heavy silence. I could practically hear her grinding her teeth. Finally, she exhaled sharply. Fine. And, I continued, enjoying every second, I want a public apology. At the next HOA meeting, you and the board will admit that you were wrong. Are you kidding me? I stayed quiet. She grumbled something under her breath before hissing, fine. And one last thing, I said, drawing it out. I want every dollar of the fines I paid refunded. That was the breaking point. Are you serious? She snapped. This is extortion. No, Karen. Extortion is what you did to this neighborhood. I'm offering a service. There was another long silence before she finally muttered, fine. Just get over here and clear the damn roads. I stood up, stretching. See? That wasn't so hard, was it? Before she could explode, I hung up. The next morning, I trudged through the deep snow to get my tractor from my friend's barn. By the time I rolled back into the neighborhood, people were already outside, watching. Some waved. Others outright cheered. It was hilarious. The same people who had voted with the HOA, who had backed the tractor ban, were now treating me like a hero. I took my time, making a big show of revving the engine, the deep roar echoing across the snow-covered streets. Then, slowly and deliberately, I started plowing. The snow was deep, but my tractor cut through it like butter. One by one, I cleared driveways, carving paths between houses, freeing people who had been trapped for days, but when I reached Karen's house, I stopped. I could see her standing at the window, arms crossed, her face twisted in frustration. She was watching me, waiting. So I made sure to clear every other driveway first. Every time I passed her house, I slowed down just enough to let her see the smirk on my face. I saw neighbors whispering, grinning as they caught on to what I was doing. One even walked up and murmured, "Dude, you're not actually going to clear hers, are you?" I chuckled. Not yet. For hours, I worked, clearing street after street, house after house, while Karen's driveway remained a towering wall of snow. The longer I waited, the angrier she got. Finally, she stormed outside, bundled up in layers, her expression carefully neutral. "Thank you for helping," she said stiffly. I killed the engine and climbed down. "Oh, I'm just following HOA policy." Her eye twitched. "We really do appreciate it." I folded my arms. "I'll clear your driveway. But first, I want that apology. Right here. Right now." A few neighbors gasped. Others smirked, clearly enjoying the show. Karen's face turned red. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," I said, loud enough for the entire street to hear. "You forced me to remove my tractor, fined me for having it, and now you want my help? I'll do it, but you need to admit, right now, that you were wrong." More whispers. More grins. The neighborhood was watching. Karen's face twisted like she had swallowed a lemon. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she muttered, "Fine. You were right. The rule was misguided." I cupped a hand to my ear. "Sorry, what was that?" "I didn't hear you." Her jaw clenched. "I said you were right. The HOA was wrong. The tractor ban was a mistake." I let the moment hang in the air before finally nodding. "See? That wasn't so hard." Then, and only then, I cleared her driveway. And as I worked, I noticed something. People were talking. Whispering, asterisk asterisk. The tides were turning. Karen and her HOA had lost their grip on this neighborhood. And this? This was just the beginning. As I finished clearing Karen's driveway, I could feel the shift in the air. It wasn't just about the snow anymore. The neighbors had seen everything, ***, the humiliation, the forced apology, the raw desperation on Karen's face, ***, she wasn't the untouchable HOA tyrant anymore. She was just another homeowner who had been forced to admit she was wrong, and that was dangerous for her. Word spread fast. By the time I parked my tractor back in my driveway, the entire neighborhood was buzzing. People who had never dared question the HOA before were suddenly talking, openly complaining about Karen and her ridiculous policies. That night, the group chat was on fire. "Mike, neighbor, now that I think about it, what exactly has the HOA done for us besides hand out fines?" "Lisa, former HOA enforcer, I got fined last year for leaving my Christmas lights up a day too long. But when we actually needed them to do something, they just told us to wait." "Random neighbor ***, we need to get rid of Karen. She's running this place like a dictatorship." And then, the best message of all. "Mrs. Thompson, longtime resident, I think it's time for a leadership change. If we get enough signatures, we can vote her out." I read the message twice, then sat back with a grin. The rebellion had officially begun. By morning, a petition was already circulating. It wasn't just about the tractor ban anymore, it was about years of HOA abuse, the arbitrary fines, the pointless rules, the way Karen had treated the neighborhood like her own personal kingdom. Neighbors started knocking on doors, gathering signatures. I didn't even have to be the one to push it forward, it had taken on a life of its own. The HOA board, once so feared, was completely losing control. Karen, realizing what was happening, tried to do damage control. She sent out emails insisting that everything she had done was **** in the best interest of the community, ***. She even went door to door, trying to convince people not to sign the petition. But it was too late. By the end of the week, the petition had more than enough signatures to trigger an emergency recall vote. The meeting was packed. More people showed up than I had ever seen at one of these things. Some had never even attended an HOA meeting before, but tonight, they were here to watch Karen fall. She sat at the front of the clubhouse, arms crossed, her usual smug confidence cracking under the weight of what was coming. Brad and Lisa, her once loyal enforcers, were nowhere to be seen. They knew what was about to happen, and they weren't about to go down with her. Mike stood up, holding the petition in his hand. "We, the residents of this community, formally motion to remove Karen as HOA president, effective immediately." Karen scoffed, shaking her head. "This is ridiculous. I have done nothing but enforce the rules fairly, ***. "Fairly?" Someone called from the back. "You fined me for having a basketball hoop in my driveway. You told me I couldn't plant flowers that weren't on the approved color list," another voice added. Karen's jaw tightened. "The rules exist for a reason. If we just let everyone do whatever they want, this place will fall apart." Mike smirked. "Seems to me it already did. Under your leadership." The vote was called. When the results were announced, the room erupted in cheers. 81% voted to remove her. Karen sat there in stunned silence as the decision was made official. Then, slowly, she stood up, shaking her head. "This is a mistake," she muttered. "No," someone shouted from the back. "The mistake was thinking we'd put up with you forever." The applause that followed nearly shook the walls. Karen stormed out, her reign officially over. But the neighborhood wasn't done yet. With her gone, a new HOA board was elected that same night. Mike was named HOA president, and the very first thing on the agenda? Rolling back Karen's worst rules. Mike * first order of business, abolishing the tractor ban. Unanimous vote * approved. Mike * second order of business, removing excessive fines for minor infractions. Unanimous vote * approved. Mike asterisk third order of business, canceling the HOA's contract with that useless snow removal service. Unanimous vote asterisk approved. It was glorious. But the best part? The neighborhood decided to purchase its own emergency snow clearing equipment. They wanted a community-owned tractor so that this never happened again. And when they asked me if I wanted to be the one to operate it, I just smiled. Oh, I'd love to. As long as it doesn't violate HOA policy. The room burst into laughter. And Karen? She put her house up for sale the very next month. I made sure to plow an extra-large snowbank in front of her "For Sale" sign before she left. You know. Just for old time's sake, asterisk asterisk. The moment Karen stormed out of that HOA meeting, a weight seemed to lift from the entire neighborhood. People who had once tiptoed around HOA rules, afraid of fines or retaliation, were suddenly laughing, shaking hands, and exchanging stories about how much of a nightmare she had been. It wasn't just about me or my tractor anymore. Karen's downfall was a victory for the entire community. With her gone, the neighborhood finally felt like home again. The new HOA actually listened to people instead of micromanaging them to death. The ridiculous fines stopped. The nonsense rules disappeared. And for the first time in years, neighbors actually talked to each other instead of reporting one another for minor infractions. It was a change that should have happened long ago. But while Karen had lost her power, she wasn't done being petty. A few days after she put her house on the market, I got a text from an unknown number. "Karen, I hope you're happy. You ruined everything." I stared at the message for a moment, then laughed. The irony was almost too much. She had spent years making people's lives miserable, and now she was angry that the neighborhood was better without her? I typed back a simple reply. Nah. I just made it better. Then I blocked her number. A few months later, winter started creeping back in, but this time, there was no panic. No HOA meetings arguing about snow removal. No ridiculous rules about what equipment we could use. Nope, this time, we were ready. When the first major snowfall hit, our new community tractor was out within the hour. Volunteers helped clear sidewalks and driveways. Neighbors stepped up instead of waiting around for some overpriced service that would never show. At one point, Mike walked up beside me as I maneuvered the tractor through the streets, pushing aside the fresh snow. "Crazy how much things have changed, huh?" I smirked. "Crazy how easy it was once we got rid of the dead weight." He laughed. Amen to that. And as I looked around at my neighborhood, the same one that had once let Karen run wild with her power trips, I realized something. For the first time in years, this place actually felt like home. And Karen? She was just a bad memory, buried under the same snow she swore we didn't need a tractor for. So, what do you think? Have you ever had to deal with a Karen or a nightmare HOA? Let me know in the comments. Let's see who had it worse.